think is going to be an amazing and awesome episode for Awkward Insurance. Ash, last year, Awkward Insurance recorded a couple episodes on dyslexia and ADHD, and we learned that those really resonated with our high school students and teachers that participate in the National Alliance CISR high school programs. Some business professionals provided us some awesome feedback, but the feedback that touched me and that got me the most was when I got one from a parent of a child who was struggling with one of the disorders that we talked about in those two episodes. Because I know as a parent, when we get a diagnosis for our child, the first thing we do is ignore all medical advice and reassurances that everything's going to be okay. We go out to the internet and we search everything we can, and we learn that this disorder is going to set our child up for failure and possibly wind them up in jail somehow. So it's just kind of what happens. So when they hear that they are not alone, that you can actually grow up to be successful with these disorders with the right help and the right acknowledgement, I think it just really resonates with them and helps them calm their fears and their nerves and their anxieties. Natalie Russell was one guest that we had to talk about being successful with dyslexia. And then our former co-host, Kataraya Ferris, she and I discussed her process with ADHD. Each episode was so informative and raw as they shared their experiences. And I have to admit that I actually hid a little bit and didn't share at the time that I too have ADHD. Ash, you then did an episode with Meg McKean on Bound and Determined about your personal struggles with ulcerative colitis. Did you happen to get any feedback on your episode?
I did. And the feedback was, first of all, I was never anticipating any feedback from it, but the feedback that I got was incredible. And I just actually went and screenshotted one right now, just in case you wanted specifics on it. And I'm getting choked up again thinking about it. And it's just the outpouring of, I guess empathy and gratitude for speaking about the shitty situation, pun intended, was just incredible. And I mean, I have never been afraid to talk about it. Like at this point in my life, having ulcerative colitis and what I've had to go through, and being 34 and having had multiple colonoscopies by now, where I made lots of people uncomfortable with comments. Like usually I get dinner before these kinds of things.
Oh gosh.
It's like, I'm not afraid to talk about it. I just assumed like people don't want to know about it. And it turns out there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with it, or have a family member struggling with that, or other certain situations. And they were just super grateful that somebody could talk about it in a humorous way, I guess.
Yeah. How long have you known you've had ulcerative colitis? Like, when did you get that first diagnosis?
I was diagnosed in August of 2018. What I will say is that hindsight's always 2020. I thought what was happening prior to that was normal. And then it just started getting like, there was like one or two things. And I'm like, this definitely isn't normal. But I think that the signs had been there for quite a while prior. And I just thought it was typical, like whatever IBS or IBD, whatever the lesser of the two is with those.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you say this, that you thought that what was prior to that was normal. I struggle with a reproductive disorder that I had always thought was the symptoms of it's normal. Everybody has cramps. Every woman has cramps. And I was just recently diagnosed with adenomyosis like a week or two ago. And I've struggled with that. And I think one of the things that I struggled with was how I don't want to say lied to myself, but believed that it was normal. So I consistently dismissed every symptom that I had, all the pain that I had, all the struggles that I had going on. So when you said that you felt like everything was normal before that, there's no telling how long you had lived with that, but you were able to compartmentalize it and put it away. I'm sorry about that you kind of did the same thing it's kind of a harsh reality when you come to terms with you've lied to yourself instead of getting yourself the help that you need.
Hey, it's all good. And I mean, I definitely don't talk about it to have people feel bad or anything like that. I mean, we're friends. I know what you mean by when you say I'm sorry, but it's just, I more wanted to talk about it from the aspect of, hey, I don't look sick, but takes an emotional toll on me when I have to say, sorry guys, I can't come to this. I have to cancel these plans. I have to last minute do that. Like that doesn't work for my type A personality. I hate canceling things last minute. And I just had Friday, I was laid out. I had to cancel my hair appointment and my volunteering on Saturday morning. And I tried to do it early enough in advance to get it covered and make sure the person could fill that spot for my hair appointment. But I felt guilty which ironically then makes my stomach hurt more because stress is a factor when you're already in a flare. So it's like a vicious circle, but it's all good. I'm working on it. We'll figure it out.
I can already see a follow-up podcast on this particular subject where we talk about being a business professional with the hidden diagnoses that we have when you can't see the illness. But let's get off of that for just a minute. I'm really happy that we did touch on that. But here's the thing. I think these types of episodes really resonate with people because naturally we need to connect. And post 2020, we're not going to talk about that, but post 2020, when more people are remote than ever before, or even when we're not remote, sometimes we just internalize things and we ignore it and we don't tell others about it. And we think that we are the only, that is the most astounding thing, to be honest with you. And I'll eventually actually introduce you, Taylor. But I think one thing that happens is that one thing that astounds me is that when you start talking to other people or say that you are affected by something, a flood of people will start going, "Oh, me too." And they'll tell their story and they'll literally say, "I thought I was the only one." It blows my mind how there are billions, trillions maybe of people on this earth. And we constantly tell ourselves that we are the only one affected by whatever it is, whether it's any kind of mental illness, or maybe we're just having a bad day, or it's a struggle with a boss, or it's a struggle with, some medical situation. It's a struggle with children and parenting or whatever. We constantly feel alone. So I think that's why these episodes really resonate. It's one of the core reasons why I do the podcast, because I don't want to feel alone, and I don't want other people to feel alone, which is why here's the introduction, which is why we invited Taylor Garcia back to the podcast after doing his episode about marketing and all that was perfectly awesome and great. He dropped a little nugget in there that he struggles with stuttering. And I would have never even heard it had he not said it. So welcome back to Awkward Insurance, Taylor. We are so excited to have you here to talk about this important topic that just drives who you are in your life and your experiences. So welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get out of the heavy stuff for a second. Tell us about stuttering.
Yeah, I think as a whole, stuttering, it can come in so many different, I've seen so many different people struggling with it in different ways. Some are more extreme, some are, maybe it's just certain words. And then there was people I was in a class with that couldn't even say a sentence without every word being a stutter.
You were in a class, so there was a class for this particular disability, or it was?
Yeah, it was within my school. So in elementary school, I really struggled with it. So my parents put me in this speech therapy class that the school was offering. There was maybe me and 3 other kids. It was very small. And you ask the elementary school kid in me, it was not very helpful, but maybe it was. But we
never think things are helpful when we're kids.
Right? A good point. But but it was a lot of basics. Kate Taylor, say apple. And I was and I really struggled because I was guys, I could say the word. Come on. It's not that, And so, but yeah, I was in there and I saw a lot of kids, they couldn't say that. And I still could. But when I started going with a sentence and I started having conversation, that's kind of when it came out. And I just kind of found where it triggered more and where it didn't. And I just tried to really have to learn, okay, I can't get too excited and talk too fast. Or if I get angry or upset, I can't, it comes out, or certain words. And I just, over the years, I started to just take out words out of my vocabulary that I just knew that I just literally can't say.
What are some of those words that you knew you couldn't say? Not that I'm trying to get you to say them. I'm so sorry. That was okay.
No, it's
awkward.
okay.
Ash is Dustyne.
No, it's not. It's totally fine. So unfortunately, one of them is my name.
Oh, wow.
I stutter. It's funny because when I say it, when I'm talking about me stuttering my name and I say my name, it'll be fine. But in a casual conversation, one thing I've always laughed about was if I answer the phone, right? The phone rings. I can't just pick it up and be hey, this is Taylor. Well, see, now I can. But normally I can't say it that way. I have to say a certain sentence and then put in my name. So I'd be this is Taylor, right? So I learned, okay, if I'm at the office, I'll say Jackson Insurance, Taylor speaking. And I could say it that way and I wouldn't stutter. But I had to say the full sentence and put my name in a specific area of the sentence to where it didn't, so I don't stutter. And I've made this into like a formula, I swear. And some people laugh because they're like, you're kind of beating around the bush to get to what you're asking for. I'm like, well, there's a reason. Like, like for instance, when I was a kid, like I'd go to a restaurant and I wanted to order a Dr. Pepper. That's another word I can never say. So like if the waitress asked what I wanted, I couldn't just blurt it out. Like it would take me a good 5-10 seconds to say the word. So I'd always be like, do you guys have Mr. Pibb or do you have Dr. Pepper? And then they'd say Dr. Pepper and I'd say, okay, that. And then, so I had to like my whole family's like, they don't have Mr. Pibb. Like, why? I'm like, well, that's the way I could say it without going Dr. Pepper, And so over the years, I just had to figure out words. And now my wife kind of knows, and she could see like when I'm kind of like going around, I'm using my fingers like as if everyone could see me, but like going around words to get to what I'm trying to say, versus like just bearing through it, And sometimes I just have to because there's no way around it. But it's less common now than it was when I was a kid. It has gotten a lot better.
It's so interesting, and this is obviously a subject that I am not super familiar with at all. Like I don't really know a lot about it other than what I think the basics people would know. So I apologize if this is a very basic question, but you said when you get really excited and you have to like slow yourself down, which I get that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get angry, what about if you are nervous? Does it kick in that, like, are those two like the main scenarios that it typically happens, or do nerves have to do with it?
Oh yeah, I think nerves are definitely a part of it as well. I mean, it can be, I think it's really, for me, it's like any real emotion, like it's weird to say. I mean, and then actually then I go and say it could be in a casual conversation. It comes out too. So maybe it's just all the time, but yeah, there is, like, for instance, I just did my first, I wouldn't say public speaking event, but I stood in front of like 100 realtors last week and I introduced our agency and who we are and who I am and stuff. And that was really the first time I've got in front of like a decent sized crowd and spoke. I don't do that. And I want to, but I just never have. And I filmed myself because I wanted to hear it back as like, just to judge myself on how I did. And it came out a lot. I could tell because I was nervous, I was like, hey guys,
That's really unique that you found a way to create a speaking formula for yourself. Did you learn it in your speech classes that you thought weren't helpful? Or did you learn that on your own?
I totally just learned that on my own. As over the years, I found certain words I couldn't say, like in insurance. One of the most common words I probably use a lot is deductible. Can't see, I could say it now just fine, but I stutter that word every single time. And it's like, oh gosh, it's so painful when I'm on the phone. And I think what you're saying, like in business, like when I'm presenting to these, like what I found is early on in insurance was a lot of people would call me out and be like, hey, you're stuttering. Like, are you nervous? Or like, and some of the business owners and stuff I was presenting policies to, like they would straight up ask me, like, is this your first time?
Oh, talk about rude. Damn.
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, no, is it yours?
But so then I finally just would tell him, like, I'd make it kind of a joke and I'd just be like, hey guys, I'm not nervous. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years now. I just have a stuttering issue. So bear with me. Right.
Do you feel like that's, I don't know. I mean, I get why it's necessary because then it opens people's awareness a little bit. But I also feel like people who on the daily deal with this, you shouldn't have to explain yourself every daggone day.
No, you shouldn't. And I don't think I have to, but I think I was already coming in talking to older business owners. I was pretty young and it looked like I came off very nervous when I'm presenting a policy because I'm stuttering like throughout half of it. And so I just wanted them to know, like, this isn't me not knowing what I'm talking about, or this wasn't me just winging this, and this is why I'm stuttering. Like, I don't know, I just did it. And a few times out of those times I'd mentioned it opened up more doors, and it actually
awesome.
got
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, and it got us a little more intimate because then they started asking questions like, oh, how long have you been doing this? And then one guy was like, my son stutters and it's really tough. And
there you go. That's what it was leading to.
Yeah.
It's the connection. Like you just went beyond this business transaction to adding a connective piece in there.
Right.
And he, like, what did I say? Parents are the first one to say, their child and they want so badly to connect with somebody
Sure.
to see the future possibility of their children.
On top of that, though, like that resonates with me, and I totally understand. Probably just coming from the different aspect of what I deal with, being upfront and being vulnerable with people, because we always say you do business with people you know, like, and trust. And what better way to start to build that trust with somebody than saying like, hey, this is what's going on. And like you said, you like to just get it out of the way in the beginning, as opposed to trying to keep it in and making people think you're nervous or it's your first time. I mean, there's so many times that I go out to eat with people, whether it's dinner, lunch, whatever, and we'll be sitting there and they'll be done with their food and I've taken 2 bites. And they're like, oh, is something wrong? Are you nervous? Like, why don't you want to eat? I'm like, no, I want to enjoy our time together. So I'm afraid to eat. I'll eat when I get home. And I always take it home and I eat and I'm fine. So I get it. It's a lot. Sometimes you don't want to overshare, but at the same time, it just makes things easier when you're like, listen, this is why I'm not eating. Everything is fine other than what I'm dealing with, or this is why I'm stuttering. I'm not nervous. I know what I'm doing.
Right. And I think throughout school that really helped me. Just I threw it out there, not and didn't let the kids make it a thing. I made it a thing. And I think throughout the years of since I was 8 years old to high school, I was always the kind of the one that made it not a joke, but I kind of made fun of myself a little bit or like talked about it. And so I didn't allow the people that were bullying me to let it get to me, because I was laughing with them. Yeah, I know it's funny, huh? Or it's weird. I know it's dumb, it's stupid, whatever. I agreed with them a little bit, and that most of the time it just kind of shut them up, right? And then they kind of knew like, oh well, this isn't gonna get to him, and then they kind of stopped. And that's why my parents, obviously as a parent, it was really hard for them because they knew. I mean, they saw it, right? And there was other things I struggled with as well in school, so that was just the tip of the iceberg. But I always threw it out there, and I always like not made fun of myself, but I laughed with them about it. And I was just like, I know, man, like I can't even say the freaking word, and like I'd kind of make it a thing, and then it kind of just stopped. Now there was a bunch of kids that did it, so I kind of had to go through each one, but it kind of stopped them. And I think that was a big part of why throughout school, like it didn't affect me like it does some. And I have spoke at we have a few locally. There was one, we hired a CSR at one point. Her daughter stuttered and we connected very well. She didn't know I did at the time we spoke. And she was in this little community. There was a thing which I didn't even know about in our community. There's like a little group within our city that they all got together, and it was adults, it was children, it was of all ages. And they had stuttering from anywhere from, there was adults 50 years old that couldn't even say a word, like a sentence, like, and then there was kids that were doing it. And then there was all different. So her daughter was in there and I went and visited and they had me speak, and it was really kind of cool. And I just like talked to them all, because there's a lot of kids that were like, yeah, there's a lot of kids that make fun of me at school. And, some of them were like 8, 9 years old. And I was just like, I know, bud, like it's going to happen, but what you got to do is you got to not let it get to you. And it's so easy to say than it is like, I know it during when you're in it, it's really hard. But I just tried to encourage them to be like, you know what, it's okay, because it will get better. I assume there's a lot of people that stutter younger, early, like really bad, and then it gets better over time from what I've seen. I don't know the science on that, but and then I've seen there's some adults that still struggle with it. So I just try to tell the kids, like, for me, it did get a little better over time, and it's okay. You can still do everything you want to do. Just try to not let them bully you or pick on you, and just ignore them or laugh with them like I did, and it helped.
Well, and you laughed with them, and it's like, so you said that there were some kids that it kind of just shut it down and you moved on, and then there were others that it didn't. And I think that probably filters over into adult life. Like, those people that didn't stop weren't your people, and you learned that and you avoided them and you moved on. And I think it's going to be this, I'm sure it's the same thing in business. I'm just sitting here, the fact that we even have to have this conversation, that there's people out there that call you out on it and say like, oh, this is your first rodeo or whatever, like that blows my mind, because I've never had that mindset. So
Right.
I think, if people are doing that to you from a business perspective, then that's not a client you want, because why would you want to have a client that is going to act that way? It has nothing to do with insurance, but it has everything to do with how you treat people. So, it's probably
Oh,
a
sure.
good filter as well for like, all right, I definitely don't want you as a client, because if you're doing this now, I can only imagine what's going to happen when you are a client and something goes wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you would be so surprised because my wife hates it. She gets very angry. And I don't. It doesn't bother me. But I probably get not made fun of. Like they're not purposely making fun of me, but they laugh, right? Probably weekly still. Like I go to the grocery store, right? I'm checking out and they ask me something and I stutter on the word and then they start laughing at me or whatever. And I don't know. And my wife gets so angry. Like she's about to like attack the lady across the counter because she's like, how dare you make fun of him for stuttering, you know? And then in my head, I'm thinking of it. I tell my wife, it doesn't bother me. I said, I think they're looking at it as it was a one-off thing and I stumbled on my word and I had a brain fart or whatever. Like, I don't think they're purposely saying, oh, this guy stutters and I'm going to laugh at him. I think they probably just thought I had a brain fart, right? But so that's how I think of it. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. And I ignore it. My wife's like, how dare her? She's a 40-year-old lady. She was in her mid, I can't believe she would do that. And I'm like, I know it, but if it doesn't bother me, honey, you shouldn't let it bother you, but I get it still like on the regular, whether I'm at the bank, if I'm at the grocery store, like it is still very surprising. And I guess over the time, I'm just kind of numb to it now. Like it doesn't bother me, but I am still very surprised that people comment on it. Not, but I look at it as they don't know, and maybe if I just educated them a little bit, but I don't care that much to like go deeper into it. Like with the lady at the cash register, like,
exactly.
Did you know this is a thing? Like, but
that's difficult though as a wife, but I could already see like as a wife, I would probably develop the same type of mom look that I do with my kids when they better stop doing what they're doing, that I'm staring down that cashier and I'm like, you better stop right now. This is not okay. Take a second to remind us, since it's been an episode ago, or just in case somebody's jumping into this episode as their very first episode and hasn't listened to Taylor before, what your professional background is to see kind of the journey that you've taken.
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, just a quick thing is as up until probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I was just that average musician that had no money and was traveling the country and doing all that. And then I met my wife and her father-in-law brought me into the agency because we got married and had our first child. And he's like, you need a job because you need money. And so I started working at their agency. We're, a small family-owned independent agency here in Southern California. I've been here almost 9 years now. We've actually just recently had some breakthroughs at the agency. We met a crossroads where I was ready to embark on a new journey of like ownership, and I wanted that role. But my in-laws at the time, I felt they weren't quite ready to give up those reins or like take a step back. So we ended up coming to an agreement, and we signed an agreement that I will be buying them out in 3 years. So they have officially stepped back. I am in charge now, and I am running it. I kind of switched from just the producer role to management and leader.
It's a whole different mindset, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
I just got goosebumps. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I am too. And I was really excited. And it was a couple of really hard conversations to have with them, because we're family. So it was like, we have to try to separate the family and the business, right? But it was all good. And they were very open about it, and they laughed at the end. They go, we've been waiting for you to tell us this. We have been waiting for you because we didn't think you were ready until you did come into us and say, it's my turn, And so, yeah, we ended up doing it and we're really excited. And my father-in-law was really excited to have me do it. And he's like, I just want to see it from the outside, what you turn this into. And so, yeah, so I am transitioning out now or we're transitioning roles now. And it's been great. So now I'm kind of focused on growing the team and growing the agency in a little more of a different direction. But yeah, we do it all. I mean, we do commercial, personal lines, life and health. So we've been kind of hiring for each different role in the agency. And yeah, it's been a wild last couple, I'd say like a month. It's been a pretty crazy time.
I was going to ask, we just talked to you a couple of weeks ago. It sounds like this has all happened in between that time, or you were just keeping really good secrets.
No, this literally all just happened within like the last month or so. Cause a lot of it was just in me. I was buried in and I was, of course I'd go home and just vent to my wife and she's like, then do something about it, and so I ended up, okay, I'll mention it and we'll see where it goes from there. And they were very thankful that I did. And they were really excited.
I adore your wife. I'm the same type of wife. I'm like, stop coming home and griping. I want to use a different word. Griping to me about it and do something about it.
Yeah. And she pushed me and she goes, I don't care what you do. Just whatever you want to do, you know? And
Just stop
yeah.
griping to me about it.
Yeah. Right. Because she works also here, and she's like, I don't want to talk insurance outside of the office as well as being at the office all day. So, you know, she's not like me that I'm like literally talk about it in my sleep. So I'm like, she's like, honey,
Me
we're at
too.
home. Like,
Oh yeah, so do I. Steve and I are constantly talking about it. I don't know if I'd be able to work with somebody in insurance and not be able to talk about it after hours. God bless you.
right? It's really hard. So that's a little bit about the agency. Like I said, we're just a small family-owned agency. We are going to be making some changes, which is exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to where this goes.
All right, so I've got 2 points to make. My first point is not a question. It's I think that Taylor is now going to be a recurring guest on our show, because now I want to have another one talk about the transition and the conversations on transitions, because I mean, trust me, the hardest thing I ever had to do was say, hey dad, I'm leaving the agency and moving to Ohio. Like that was like, I couldn't get the words out. And so I can only imagine, you know, coming from a scenario where they're your in-laws. I mean, so I think maybe it's probably just as hard, if not, I would think it's harder to talk to your in-laws, because it's not like you're their actual son and saying, hey, mom and dad, I'm taking over. So I would love, that's going to be another episode. But because we're nearing the end, something that I think would be great to touch on would be how overcoming stuttering had helped you potentially overcome challenges in the future. Like, you know, you learned that you can get through that and how to navigate it. Has it helped you be able to navigate other situations better or overcome other challenges?
Absolutely. Because it's so funny, because you talk to my dad or you talk to a lot of people growing up, like whatever it was, there was teachers, there was so many people that they would tell me flat out, like, and I don't know why they felt they need to say it, but they did. And I remember saying it throughout high school and stuff. We took some career day type like courses and stuff in high school. They would all joke with me like, Taylor, you're never going to get into talk radio, or you're never going to get into like public speaking. And like, yeah, it was just so funny. They would always like throw their 2 cents in like things I couldn't do because of how I talked.
Why do we feel like we need to do that to children?
I don't know.
No, it's not we. I don't have the three of us ever done that. No.
No,
exactly.
But like,
I know
humans do that so much. My daughter does not have dyslexia, but when she was in pre-K and kindergarten, oh my God, the ABCs were the hardest thing that child had ever done in her life, right? It was hard for her to pick up the ABCs, and teachers, she's going to need to repeat because she can't. The child is in 7th grade and reads at a college level now. So why do we have to label so freaking early on and tell them?
Yeah, no, and there was a lot.
Educators should know better.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that, you know, because I did also struggle with, I was a drummer, or I am a drummer. So throughout high school, I'd be tapping and I'd be moving, and they try to get me on medication for ADHD and all this other stuff. So, and my parents are like, no, like he's just a little boy and he wants to go outside and he wants to run around. Like, you know, we don't need to put him on medication and stuff. So there was a lot of that. And my teachers would all do this to me no matter what it was. And it was really interesting to hear, because growing up, my parents were, I commend them because they were the opposite. They're like, Taylor, you can do whatever you want, you know? And that's why they pushed me to do music and everything else, even though I wasn't making any money. They're like, go for it. You got this. And so as time progressed, growing up, it was like, well, they said I can't do this or that. And then when I got into this industry, I was like, sales, like, I can't do that. Like, I can't talk in front of people, or like, you know, I need to be working behind a desk and like not talking to people. That's what I was always told.
Right. That would be a traditional management way to think of things. Like, what is this person's weakness? Now let's play to their strength. And they would see stuttering as a weakness. And instead of giving you an opportunity to grow, they would have stunted your growth in that. So,
totally. And my father-in-law was like the opposite. Oh, you're going to be great at this. You speak well, like, you know, this and this. And I was like, really? Okay. And all he did was like feed me like positivity. And I just kind of was like, okay. And then it's so funny because then I talked to my parents about this not too long ago, and I was just like, who knew that I'd be like talking to people on a podcast or like going up on the stage, like, you know? And they were just like, yeah, who knew? And there's so many people that comment to me now. I met a guy the other day and he goes, your voice is like, I would like have you narrate for me, like, and I was like, okay, wow, like. But, you know, and that's why I like started to just make content, and I just talked in front of my camera and I just did it. And I don't know, there was this weird confidence that I had in myself that I was just like, who cares? If I stutter, I stutter, and it was just what it was. And I think now, to answer your question, Ash, I built a freaking clock on this, but I think now, especially seeing what I was told then, like if you look at the 16 or 17-year-old me to now, man, I've done so much that I was told that I was never going to do. And so I'm like, taking over the agency, I'm petrified, right? There's so much there that, oh my gosh, like I'm terrified to like take over the team, and like, are they going to want me to take over? Like there's so much unknown, but I'm like, man, there was so much unknown the first time like I got on that stage, and it ended up really, really well. And I was so glad I did it. And so there's been multiple occasions to where it was like really hard. It was really scary. And I just kind of just did it because of the speech, or it was because of whatever it was. And so I'm like, shoot, bring it on. I'll just try it all. We'll see if I fail or not. And I don't mind failing because I'll learn from it. And, and so it really did help me. And that's why I try to tell other kids that I see, my kids, when they were really little, stuttered a lot. And I was like, oh, here it comes. Both of them. And I was like, oh no.
Did you get scared?
A little bit, just because I know how kids are at school. And I was like, okay, I hope they have the resilience I did, but I can't assume they will. And my wife's like, okay. And I looked at her, I was like, ooh. But they grew out of it really quickly. They only had it for a brief moment. And now they don't have it at all. But it is a little scary, and it is something that I guess is more common than I thought. I've been seeing it more and more other places. And like I said, I've had clients reach out to me because their kids have it. And, so I just try to help encourage wherever I can. And, hey, and like I said, we have this little community in our city, and I go there every now and then, and I talk to the kids, or I talk to the adults, and, they're like, you're in sales? Like, that's terrifying. And I'm like, I know it was terrifying for me in the beginning too, but it got easier,
It's terrifying for people without stuttering. I mean, I still get scared half the time, so I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh gosh. So as we wrap up, are you familiar with stutteringhelp.org?
Yes.
Okay,
I have seen
cool.
Yeah,
they've got a ton of great resources on there. They've got a great FAQ, and I don't even remember if this is where I found the information, but I've been poking around on it. They've got a lot of resources on there that not only relate to kids, but parents with kids, teens, adults, business people. I mean, there's like a category for every single person, because you're not just going to stay a kid with a stuttering or a speech disability. You're eventually going to grow up. Kids turn into adults.
Sure.
And we've got to have resources too. Not everything can be about kids all the time. So that's a great resource if you are affected by this communication disorder. And it's really interesting that you said you were a musician, because the longest list of people with a stuttering disability were musicians. So current President Joe Biden, of course, he was not a musician, but he is affected by stuttering. And then infamous British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was also affected by stuttering. And now here come your musicians. Elvis Presley.
Wow.
B.B. King, one of my favorites, but he was affected by stuttering. And then two of the most well-known voiceover actors, as well as actors, Samuel L. Jackson and James Earl Jones.
Wow. Who knew?
Right?
I had no idea.
Like some of the most iconic voices that you hear in your head from commercials and voiceovers and freaking Star Wars, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
These people, even though they had a speech disability, they still leaned into that as their strength. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And maybe I think that, I don't know. I feel like that's the reason I've gotten better with my stuttering over the years, because I'm putting myself in situations to where I'm trying to get myself to speak better, right? I think maybe, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I think if I were to just sit at a desk and not talk to anyone and never have done it, I think it wouldn't have gotten, or my speech wouldn't have improved as much as it did. Because I think over the years, I really tried to work on it. Because I was like, I have to talk to people. I have to lead this team. I got to do this. I got to talk in front of these people. I got to try to work on it, And I just always kind of.
I wonder if that comes from being told constantly as a kid that you couldn't do it. And so now you've got it in your head. Like, I'm going to do it because why not? Or you suck and I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, that could be. And my parents were always supportive. I just remember as a kid, the only thing my dad would say, because I'd get really excited and I'd be like, Dad, and I'd start stuttering, and he'd be like, I just remember every time, slow down, Taylor. What are you wanting to say? And I slow down, and that's what he'd always say. And every time I'd take a breath, Dad, I wanted to say, and I'd say it all fine. And I noticed like, okay, it was like when I got really excited. And that was when I started to figure out when I was younger, like, what are the times that would really trip me up like that? And that's kind of when it was. My parents were always encouraged. They were always very concerned, but they were always encouraging of me and just be like, you got this. You'll do whatever you need, which is nice.
That explains why you stutter over the word deductible, because you get so freaking excited to talk about deductible.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Taylor, it's been fun. It's been eye-opening. I've enjoyed listening to you talk and let us, say awkward things and ask awkward questions to explore being a professional with a speech disability. Is that what you call it? Do you call it a speech disability, or what do you say?
I've always said it's a speech impediment, but like, I don't know. I don't know the right terms, to be honest. I stutter.
The right
I
terms
guess.
are whatever feels right to you. I think everybody with the same disability, is gonna.
I always just say, if I tell someone, oh yeah, I stutter. Like I don't really use like a more formal term. I just, oh yeah, I stutter, or yeah, I've always stuttered my entire life, or that's kind of how I've used it. And yeah, it's been a journey, but it's fun. And sometimes it's still days I get super frustrated about it, and I just kind of want, if anyone listens and they do it, there are days where I get super frustrated and I get irritated because I'm like, I just want to say this freaking word, and why isn't it coming out as easy as it should? And there are those days, or if I'm making a video or I'm talking like this and I'll go back and I'll listen to it, I'm like, man, I wish I just said that smoothly. But it's a part of who I am, and I think nowadays everybody and everyone around me knows, and I just embrace it.
Yeah, and I think I know you don't need to hear this because you're a prime example of, well, you know what, maybe you do need to hear it, because sometimes I feel like I don't need to hear things, but I secretly want to hear them. What you just said, when you watch a video and you watch it, you replay it, and you say, man, I wish I could have said that smoother. Before the last podcast that we did together, and I had met you in person. We didn't talk very long, but it was there. We met in person once, then I was on the podcast. I never would have known that you had a stuttering problem, like to the extent that it was. We all get excited. I stumble over my words, but it's like, it's just one-off things. So just give yourself some grace, because I guarantee you, if you sent me the video that you recorded and I watched it and I had not known, I would have been like, that was fine. What are you talking about? So right. For you and for anybody else listening that is dealing with any sort of issue, you got to give yourself grace. You're your toughest critic, and stop, doing yourself a disservice by saying this wasn't good enough, because I guarantee you, everybody's going to think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. And absolutely, I think obviously we are all our own toughest critic. And every time I do get frustrated, and like for anyone listening to this, you will get frustrated. But then like you said, Ash, my wife or anyone that I can show in the office, anybody online, they're like I just did that speaking event. And I filmed it, and I was like, oh gosh, I came across these words, and everyone watched it. They're like, you did awesome. What are you talking about? And I was like, okay, thank you. So give yourself a break. That is something I think is really important for people, especially that are maybe younger and that are struggling with this, especially give yourself that break, because it's something that can over time improve. And if not, it makes you kind of who you are,
Yep. I agree with that. Ashley, thanks so much for giving him just the compliments that you
unsolicited advice.
Yeah, the unsolicited advice. Yeah, right. I feel like we are all our own worst critics. Thank you so much for being here, Taylor. I am so happy that we got to have this conversation with you. Any last words, any words of advice to anyone listening who might be affected by stuttering or any other type of challenge?
No, well, thank you guys for having me on, and thank you for giving that platform for the people that struggle with it, because I know it's not something that's talked about a lot. And the only thing I think I would end it on is, like Ash was saying, just give everyone that struggles with it, give yourself the break, and just work on it as best as you can, but don't be too hard on yourself through it. And especially if you're younger and you're in college or you're around peers and they do make fun of you or tease you on it, laugh with them at it. And I promise you, it'll die down, because the more and more you get affected by it, those mean people, those rude people that decide to make that as a joke, the more you just brush it off and ignore it, the less it'll happen and it'll not affect you as much as it should. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much. Toodles.
Bye.
Toodles.
Thanks for hanging out and listening to another Awkward Insurance Conversation.
If you haven't already, be sure to join the Awkward Insurance Facebook community. We have an amazing group of people on there.
And for more episodes, head over to the National Alliance website at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!
That's awkward.